Welcome to episode 15 of the Courageous Coach podcast, the podcast where we pull back the curtain on what it really takes to be courageous with your clients, your business and your life. I'm your host, Melissa Haigh. In this episode, I'm joined by Teresa Wilson. Teresa has been a significant figure in my own courage building journey. So this conversation gives an insight into my own self-development as a coach, my struggles, and my realizations about who I am as a human and as a coach. Teresa and I explore the importance of shadow work and self-compassion. We chat about our personal experiences and how those shape our coaching practice, and the courage required to confront and accept all parts of ourselves, leading to deeper personal growth and authenticity in coaching. Our conversation emphasizes the significance of stillness, embodiment, and curiosity in the process of shadow work and personal development. So, are you ready? Let's dive in. Welcome, everybody, to the Courageous Coach podcast. Thank you so much for being here. Today, I am joined by the wonderful Teresa Wilson. Thank you so much for being here, Teresa. I'm so looking forward to this conversation because this is a little bit of reflection, and maybe I might even say self-indulgence for me, because Teresa, I've been very lucky to work with Teresa in the past, and I went on a retreat, one of her retreats in November last year, which was transformational, challenging. It was hard work. But my gosh, when we think about doing the inner work as coaches, when we think about what courage looks like and being vulnerable, it was all of that. It was all of that. So it felt really, really kind of appropriate and important for me to ask Teresa if she would come onto the podcast, and she kindly agreed, because I wanted to share a little bit of what's influenced my own courage as a coach, and Teresa's work has been a big part of that. So welcome, Teresa. Thank you so much for being here. So lovely to see you.
I was so delighted. Thank you for asking.
And so I'll start, as I always do, by the really large or small question, whichever way you take it, of tell us a little bit about you, Teresa.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think I've had to practice at making these responses bigger. One of the kind of shadow areas that I've worked on and will continue to work on is not taking up space. That nobody wants to hear what you've got to say, and it's baked so deeply in. And it's that curious thing about working with shadow and bringing things in to consciousness is it's a process, it's a journey. Mm-hmm. So even though I might know that that's a block for me, it doesn't stop it being a challenge, So there's the temptation to say very little, and already I've witted quite a lot, which is fun, you see? But what can I tell you? I mean, we'll start with the obvious, which is the journey to being a coach, I suppose, which probably the seeds of that were planted about 15 years ago. And I worked in community development for many, many years. And I remember a group of women in particular that I worked with who I loved so much. It was a confidence building program. They were making a film about their local community. We had a big screening in the community hall, and they were so excited and were going to make incredible changes in their lives. Just at the point at which the training came to an end and I had to leave them. And I was so devastated to not be able to go on that transformational change journey with them. I just thought, God damn it, who gets to do that? And the answer was a coach. So I trained as a coach and have been on that journey for the last 14, 15 years or so maybe, but tortured myself for a good chunk of time. And I don't use that word flippantly, actually. When we work in isolation, and yes, we have supervisors and we might have peer coaching, but we still, when you're one-to-one with somebody in that space, your own thoughts can get very noisy and very loud. And if you have an overactive critic, coaching is the perfect environment for it to kind of come barreling in and to beat you up at the end of a session. Or mid-session, that lovely, any other coach would know what to do right now. You don't know what to do right now. So I had a lot of that a lot of the time. I can see the visceral.
I'm wincing because, yeah, I feel it. Yeah, totally.
And I always say with shadow work, it's the cringe, the wince. These are the little signals that we know that we're touching into something, right? So, it was hard a lot of the time, really hard, and I had a very unsophisticated way of knowing how I was doing. Was this a good session or a bad session? And you'd seesaw from one to the other. And I carried on like that until I did a program in Gestalt. Gestalt introduced me to the paradoxical theory of change, that we change when we become more of who we are. And something in that just blew my mind, because it meant I could just sort of develop in the way that a photograph develops. That it wasn't about not being this to become something else. It's a becoming, a developing over time. And that curiosity brought me into shadow work.
Okay.
How to integrate more of who we are. That's brought me to shadow work, which really brings me all the way up to right here, right now, talking with you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so interesting that you came to where you are now through Gestalt. I don't think I knew that. And I always remember when I was first introduced to Gestalt, when I was at Henley, we had a 2-day module with a guy called Ty Francis, who, well, blew my mind, frankly. And then, that whole thing about Gestalt, it was so challenging and different in the way that it looked at, well, the world and coaching's part in that world. It was so different from anything else that I'd learned up to that point about coaching, really. And yeah, I love this idea you say about becoming more of ourselves, because I definitely recognize that in myself and in my own coaching journey. Really, I know myself better now than I ever did when I wasn't a coach, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's almost like it's a prerequisite of being a coach that nobody tells you about, and you don't necessarily know that you're going to have to do all of this inner work or self work or whatever we call it, right? We kind of just think, well, we'll go and learn the models and the tools, and we'll get better at listening, and we'll learn how to ask great questions, and that'll all be brilliant. Yeah. And then great. And then suddenly there's, as you said, different people, different influences coming in. You're like, oh, so I have to learn, I have to become more of me. And so interesting that you said not about becoming something else. And I think that might have been my light bulb moment. Actually, I'm not sure that's right. It was a wake up moment when we did the shadow work together. It was like, oh, so this is not me changing into something else. This is me becoming more of me, which is felt quite revelatory. Might be too big a word, but it felt different, very similar to the impact that Gestalt had on me. This feels different to anything else I've understood up until this point.
It's subtle, isn't it? And yet I think it's such an important distinction, because our self-hate or our self-contempt can be so insidious that we don't know it's there. And so and if that's the foundation that we're doing our development and our growth and our improvement from, I always wince at improvement, but we're in the self-help and the change
Mm.
world, but understanding what's foundational
Mm.
is absolutely vital. Otherwise, we're always going to be running away from something that we're unconsciously thinking is inadequate or less than. Whereas flipping it is saying it's all of this and everything else.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
a different starting point. It's yes to everything.
Mm.
And that, I mean, you talk about courage, it's one of those. I first started working with shadow. It's like, love the theory, love the theory. But if it's yes to everything,
Yeah.
some of those edges are.
Yeah. Absolutely. And
Mm,
incredibly vulnerable, right? Which is why we know it's courageous.
mm.
Because, well, I know I don't. I don't want to look at the bits of me that I don't like because I don't like them. You know,
I'm not daft.
why would I do that? Are you mad? I just like it feels so counterintuitive. And I think, as you beautifully put it there, it's such an ingrained thing, not to show your, I don't know, bad qualities, the ones that you were told off for or frowned on or weren't allowed, particularly in your formative years. That hiding of those things is so ingrained.
Mm,
And then the accepting, turning everything on its head, and learning to actually to love the parts of yourself that you hate. It's like, oh, okay, that's interesting. So,
mm.
Teresa, say a little bit more about shadow or the shadow. I'm conscious that many of our listeners might be like, well, I don't quite know what that is.
Yeah, of course. So it was Jung who gave us the notions of a personal shadow as and collective shadow. But for our purposes as coaches, this is what I'm so interested in. That as you say, some coaches can choose not to do the inner work. But my sense is you'll get, it's transactional, it might be behavioral. You kind of stay above the line. If you really want to show up relationally, well, then you're there, you're in that relationship.
Mhm.
And then if you really want to kind of have an understanding of the impact that you're having on the other, you need to understand, what's going on for yourself, your baseline, and when you're tipped out of baseline.
Mm.
And when you're tipped out of baseline, sometimes that might be something you're conscious of. I know that, I don't know, people who do a thing with their mouth that my mother used to do when she was, like it might be something that you go, oh God, yeah, I know that always sends me,
Yeah.
it triggers me or whatever. But some of what shifts your baseline might be unconscious.
Right.
And so this is where the kind of Jungian personal shadow material
Mhm.
um, comes to bear. So as you say, it's aspects and elements usually from childhood that were socialized out of us.
Mm.
Good girls don't scream and shout, boys don't cry. Not like that. Stop being such a dolly daydream. Can we not get out of the house? And there can be, quote unquote, negative qualities and also quote unquote positive qualities. Kind of doesn't matter. What matters that is in the family unit, or when we're at school, that environment told us not that.
Mm.
And there's often something about the way that we learned not that for ourselves too. It might come with some shaming.
Mm.
Brené Brown talks a lot about shame scars.
Mhm.
We paint on the walls thinking that we're creating a beautiful masterpiece, and then we get shouted at. And so it registers in the body. There's that kind of visceral, not that. They don't like it when I do that. We
Mm.
might be humiliated. We might have been exposed. We might, the girls at school might have laughed at us for having a side pony.
Mm.
We thought that it looked really nice, and it was humiliating.
Mm.
And so we learn not to express ourselves, etc., etc. So these little qualities, choices, aspects of ourselves from the full range, when we weren't self-conscious, bit by bit, we learn to become self-conscious, and we jettison disowned, disallowed qualities and aspects of ourselves. in order that we can form a cohesive sense of identity to meet the world with, the family, the school, our friendship groups, and eventually work
Yeah.
and the world, and forming a life around this identity, this kind of ego-aligned
Yeah.
identity.
Mm.
But it comes knocking because it's
Mm.
it's always been there. And the older we get in particular, it comes knocking.
Mm. Mm.
And it might come knocking in the middle of a coaching session. So you might as well work out what the hell it feels like when it comes knocking.
Yeah, totally. Totally. And I think that, I mean, that is doing the inner work, right? Because you're quite right. In the middle of a coaching session, you're triggered by something, right? And us not knowing that that's going to happen, or what we might do when it does, is where we can come unstuck, right? Which is really the kind of knowing yourself, and knowing yourself well and loving yourself is really important in coaching. So when those moments happen, you can treat yourself with self-compassion, right?
Mm.
So important. And I think it's interesting as well, because one of the things that I'm really conscious of as well is that, because as you say, I think it shows up in all aspects of our lives. And it's interesting you say as you get older as well, because I've often wondered if is there an age or a stage of adult development, or some point, right, where this all starts to become in our kind of like awareness of, I think I might need to do some work here. I've often wondered about that, because I kind of think, crikey, I wasn't, if you'd come to me, if I'd come to you in November for your retreat like 20 years ago, I mean, it would not, it would not have landed. I'd have probably said at the middle of the first day, well, it's been lovely meeting you, but I need to rush home now, because I've got more important things to do, right? I'd have found some reason to not be there. So that age thing is super interesting. I think this thing about it affecting or impacting, you as a whole human, right? Your whole life, of course. I'm also really aware of how it shows up in how I run my business and how I
Mm.
approach my business as well. I talk about kind of the stories that we tell ourselves. And what I've realized since beginning the work with you is that a lot of my stories are coming from my shadow.
Mm.
Um, it's like my unconscious is seeping out into the stories that I make up about
Mm.
myself. And I became really conscious that I had that kind of, I have you must be grateful for everything. That's one of my messages. The horrible knitted jumper that Grandma gave you at Christmas, you had to say, Grandma, I love it. Thank you so much. It's brilliant. And put it straight on and look like you loved it. It could have been the worst thing in the world, but you
Mm.
be grateful for everything. And the worst thing you could possibly be was to be a spoilt brat. Those were the two that really shone out for me through the work that we did. There have been others coming to the fore since, but that whole kind of, you mustn't be a spoilt brat, that was not an attractive quality. And it's so interesting, because what I realized is I thought, it's not surprised that I struggle to say no to work,
Mm.
because I should be grateful for the work, right? And it's not a struggle. It's not a surprise. Sorry, that I sometimes struggle to say what I need, ask
Mm.
what I need, either in a power dynamic relationship or sometimes with my clients, because that's kind of a bit spoiled, and you should really just get back in your office. Spoiled. You don't want to be spoiled about this. So it's so interesting, isn't it? How a seemingly I don't know, because I don't want to be a spoiled brat. It's so, as we said, ingrained, right? I don't want to be a spoiled brat. It's a horrible thing to be. Can't bear children who are spoiled. It's awful, but it's playing out in a really lived way, right? In my day-to-day work and life. I mean, that's fascinating to me.
Mm. Mm.
Gosh, we're
Mm.
complex. Gosh, we're complex. Right? Amazing.
I love that example. It's a really rich example and so generous of you to share it. Um, and you almost did a kind of, a tensing thing here. But there's something about, for a start, once you see you can't unsee, I'll drop my shoulders. Oh, I was really holding the tension of that for you as well. People often say that to me. Sometimes after the retreats, it's like, oh, Pandora's box, like once you pop, you can't stop, can you? It's like, oh, here it is. But there's something it is courageous. For me, it's deeply, deeply, deeply courageous, because there you go, it's spoiled brat. Everything in your system, your body is like ready to toss that away.
Yeah.
It's, there's disgust there. Will have been, so part of the messaging that, we can guess that you will have received, how disgust, that there may have been some of that. So then you meet it in your adult self, and here's that disgust then coming forward. So enormous courage to keep breathing, to hold it in eye line, to say, okay, so me too. So we were saying before, like, yes to everything, and this and that.
Yeah.
This one.
Yeah.
And the self-compassion is so important here, because for me, it softens the edges enough. We don't want things to be too brittle, they'll snap. We might just want to touch. And self-compassion then will help us say, and mean it when we say, I wonder what the gift is for me. What becomes possible or available for me if I allow for spoilt brat. And even that question, what a beautiful coaching style question that invites curiosity and imagination. It's not about right, wrong answers. It's not about passing some sort of test, but equally, it's not about holding on to spoilt brat bad. That kind of really reductive messaging that we would have got as a child. So here we are as the adult with compassion, softening this thing, so that my sense is then over time, over the months, you start to realize that, a little bit of spoilt brat when I'm ... promoting my business or saying yes to this or no to that. Oh, I needed a little bit of that all along. Who knew?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's the sort of moving away from that very kind of as I said, the bits of myself that I don't like, the bits of myself that I would even in some cases say I hate. As you say, that very visceral reaction to spoilt brat, it is, I hate spoilt children. So it's a really strong thing for me. But moving that towards an acceptance, I'm not even going to say I don't love spoilt brat yet, but I'm accepting of her, if that makes sense, as part of me, I guess. And I tell you, the other thing I think is really interesting is the skill for me in kind of only very tentatively beginning to do some of this work, is that the skill for me is knowing, and again, thinking about coaching, like in the moment when something is, a part of me is triggered, and that part of me that's been triggered is not helpful in that moment. And that, if you're in the middle of a coaching session with one of my clients, I'm not, spoilt brat may or may not, but let's assume probably not going to be terribly helpful in this moment. There's something about how do you talk to yourself? How do you talk to that part of yourself in that moment? Because do you talk to it like it's something that you don't like and you hate, or
Never.
no? This is interesting.
Never, never, never. That's Richard Schwartz's work, IFS. His book is called No Bad Parts. Parentheses, I'm thinking of the work of Phil Stutz and Barry Michaels. Barry Michaels in particular has taken the shadow work stuff and run with it. Now, they do talk about a kind of malevolent energy. I'm not sure that I'm particularly on board with that, but again, it's finding the narrative or the version of the story that works for you in particular. But I'm with that no bad parts. The messaging can be brutal. It can feel like we're being stomped all over. It can feel incredibly unhelpful, or it can be that we're judging other people, and it can feel like the messaging can be lacking in skill and finesse, but my sense is the intention, if we sit with an open heart and really listen with our little inner ears, we'll find that the intention is always benevolent rather than malevolent. So,
and of course that brings us to curiosity, right? How curious can we be? So in those moments when I notice and I think, actually I don't think that's helpful right now, but that's curious that you showed up right now. Let's chat later. And it, so there's again that curiosity to be with and to sit with, I think is really important. And of course then your kind of reflective practice afterwards is where the growth happens, I think, and the awareness begins to develop and unfold. So I'm kind of interested, Teresa, at how, and it's maybe a very broad question, so we'll start broad and then we may need to narrow, because I'm really curious. Like you said, you went through that kind of initial desire to become a coach, train to be a coach, then discover Gestalt, and that led you into shadow and the work that you do now. So I'm wondering, I quite often like this idea of what's the before and after. How has that changed you, I guess, that journey? And yes, as a coach, but maybe as a human as well. And what's the shift? Shift probably is way too small a word, but what's it been for you?
I had this is what's popped into my mind, so we'll go with it. A preemptive go at, when I turned 50, I was like, right, my birthday present to myself is a business, proper grown-up business. I'm going to do all the coaching things, and I'm going to have a free lead magnet and a low cost. And I did like all the received wisdom things and created this website and created this offer. It lasted about 3 weeks. My heart's not really in it, and I kind of slowly mothballed it all, tucked it all away. But the reason I mention it is because my lead magnet was a little ebook, 6 signs that you're hard on yourself, and 3 ways to make the difference, something like that. At that point, the thing that I was most skilled at in the world and had been doing all my life was being really hard on myself.
Right.
I would say it's been the last couple of years. I said, that self-compassion piece, because for me, shadow work and self-compassion have gone hand in hand. I've trained in both on purpose, and the marriage of those two things together makes so much sense to me. And for me personally, living those, because they're daily practices, both of them. So living those has meant that there's just capacity. It's still kind of extraordinary to me, but it's like the default setting has, it's definitely tipped. It's tipped. So more of the time now, I just have more capacity for, like, genuinely, not just theoretically, and not trying to get my head to override, like nervous system cells, heart, soul, everything. Just like, it's okay to be me. Turns out.
Yeah, funny that.
And getting there by saying yes to some of the things that are really gnarly, turns out, has been, really liberating. By being able to finally, to say, well, yeah, I am, I am, I am greedy. I've met my persecutor. Terrifying. When, I hadn't realized how much of a people pleaser I was. So then to kind of unleash, and that's why my persecutor was huge, because I hadn't got any air, because I'd spent my life not creating any ripples or ruffles anywhere ever. So then I was on the clock. There was a backlog. So it's extraordinary, isn't it, that by meeting something like that should sound awful, I've never been more at peace. So that would be, and it's the beginning of the beginning, you know.
It makes, see, it's so interesting you say that. As you said that last bit, it's like my chest filled with air. You know, when you take, I didn't take a really lovely deep breath, but you know, when you take a lovely deep breath and you just feel that expansion, that's what I just
Mm.
felt, that just expansion. Yeah, who knew we just had to be ourselves, right? And who knew that that isn't easy?
Yeah.
That's the other thing as well, isn't it? You know, when I've just been reminded, like, you know, the best advice you get when you go for an interview, just be yourself. Oh, all right then. It's like, it's the easiest thing in the world, and it
Mm.
can be really hard for lots of different reasons, for sure. And I smiled inwardly when you were talking about your lead magnet, because I was thinking the other thing that I know with my coaching work and the work I do with coaches is that it came from the work I needed to do for myself.
Mm.
Um, and therefore the relationship I have with the work I do around courage building is very different from any other work I've ever done, actually, in my whole career, I think, because it's the work I needed to do. And then I want to help other people do that work, right? And that's such a gift. Such a gift.
I love that, and you know, and picking up what you were saying about, you know, just be yourself.
Mm,
What I hear in that difference, isn't it? There's all sorts of things we could do as a coach, and there was a little bit of that. Well, I could do this, or maybe I could do that,
yeah.
but it's really different when it's like, oh, it's more of a calling, is it? Well, there's that. It's this, which, you know, for me, it's like my being.
Mm,
It's not what I could do. It's like, oh, how am I going to be? And my sense is it's been the same for you.
yeah.
And that's why when people meet you in this work, it feels so different.
Mm, yeah. Yes, and I think it's also reminded me as well, I think, and now I'm thinking, oh, I'm not sure I've made that connection between witnessing your work, being part of your work, and then taking, because one of the things I remember from the retreat, which was really profound, was how in the learning you were with us. Do, not a kind of well, maybe you were. There's an element of being a teacher, but I mean that in a more Eastern way than a Western way. But that kind of, you were in the learning with us, and
Mhm.
I don't know whether that's a coach thing or a human thing, but I think that's so important when you're doing the inner work, the self-development work, that working with people who are in it as well.
Mm, mm,
Because I think that enables that self-compassion practice that you were talking about, because there's nothing more reducing than the person who's sort of sat at the front of the room and who appears to have it all sorted, teaching you something.
mm,
Because that immediately, well, for me anyway, that immediately creates the less than, the I'm inadequate in comparison. So there's something so
mm,
lovely about being in the learning with your learners, with the
mm.
people you're supporting.
I don't got nothing sorted. And I know that.
Yeah.
I'm just swimming in the. And I
Absolutely.
love that, you know. And then, and every time I'm on retreat, it's like, well, I've never been here in this configurations of humans. So
Mm,
this, there's a depth and richness and mystery and beauty to you know to this.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah,
And humility, you know, it's interesting. That's another of those words, isn't it? That has to sit really closely with courage.
yeah.
And I think for me, humility is um, it's a really necessary part of the toolkit, in a sense. Um, Maybe not quite the right way to describe it, but you know, there are times it's humility is that not clinging, isn't it? We have to meet this work with open hands, I think, and we can so cling, and humility is that, well, and it is, and so it is. I
Mm.
think that's what humility would say, and so it is. but I don't like it, but it can't be. And so it is. And
Yeah.
so it is. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, because I think the humility for me in this kind of work is really around kind of, I'm doing the work too,
Mm.
and kind of moving away from my expert
Mm.
part, which I love and smooth and make pretty, and oh yeah, I've fussed on that expert part of me all of my career, probably much of my school education as well.
Mm.
So moving less polishing of the expert part. I think that's the humility piece. I'm not the expert.
Mm.
I'm leaning in and I'm doing the work, but I'm not the expert, right? But I think the thing with humility as well, and we talk about this in courage building, or in terms of developing your grounded confidence, is around the confusion we sometimes have between humility and fake modesty.
Mm.
She's, oh well, not me really. No, it wasn't really me. It was. I didn't do that much. That kind of fake modesty, which we sometimes make the association, or that's being humble, that's showing humility. It's like, it's not. Humility is standing in your own space and holding your ground, and saying, this is the work I'm doing. This is what I'm good at. This is the work I've still got to do. Right.
Mm. Mm.
Such an interesting word.
Mm.
I kind of, a couple of things I'm still fascinated by, because I wanted to come back to this self-compassion piece, because self-compassion is a huge part of courage building, developing a self-compassion practice. If we are going to be brave, if we're going to choose to
Mm.
step into the arena, we not only need compassion and empathy, but we also need self-compassion, the ability to be kind to ourselves. And so I think, like you, I see self-compassion and courage, and as you said, shadow and courage, shadow and self-compassion, that they are side by side, hand in hand. And I love the fact that you called them a practice, because that's
Mm.
the other thing with self-compassion. It's, Kristen Neff always says, it's a daily practice. This is not, a skill set that you have or don't have. It's a daily practice. And so what does your self-compassion practice look like, Teresa?
Luckily, it can be it's often as simple as that.
Mm.
No kit, no effort, no time.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, that this has come, the hand on the heart chakra has come
Yeah.
to be such a potent shortcut, and really, and this can be, in between coaching sessions, it can be in a coaching session, it can be, it's as and when needed, isn't it? So this, and there's different ways then of touch, but self-compassion touch has been a really kind of powerful one for me, because of how fast and immediate and available it is.
Mm.
And then in terms of a daily practice, so I have a compassionate place.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of the guided exercises that we went through. Because with shadow work, there can be a lot of parts work. There might be little parts that need some attention, and so I'll always end the day with a little check-in in my compassionate place.
Right.
My crone is always there. She's my kind of self-compassion guide, if you like. I love my crone. Been there, done it all, seen it all, doesn't give a toss. I love that energy is like, so it's
Yeah.
me and her by the fire, and then whoever else what any other parts that I'm working with, or anything, any other parts that need attention, have a little check-in. So, and there might be other things as needed, but as a practice,
Those are
there's
the
a,
anchors.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah. I love the soothing touch. Right. I discovered on a self-compassion program, actually, that because I always found that kind of hand on heart, you get it in lots of different types of practices, don't you? Just put your hand, or both your hands, on your heart. And I was always kind of like, don't really connect with that. I'm not I'm just doing it because you're telling me to, which I think is
Mm.
so often what we do, isn't it? Oh, I'm being told to do it. Mustn't be, mustn't be naughty, mustn't break the rules. So I'll do what I'm told. Um, and I discovered that and as you say, it can be anywhere on your body, legs, face, heart, wherever, right? But actually, the soothing element for me is the warmth of my
Mm.
hands. It's warmth that is my soothing touch. It doesn't matter where I put my hands, as long as my hands are warm. And if they're not warm, I just have to move them a little bit and create a bit of friction, and suddenly they're warm. And I'm like, so even those little, when you practice it daily, you can start to pick up on those really little nuances, rather than, yeah, someone told me to put my hands on my heart, right? Which is like, but what does that feel like for you?
Yeah.
What does that create for you?
And that's the thing, isn't it? It's that I think the thing that's really hard in all of this, everything that we've been talking about today, shadow work, even a self compassion practice, any of it, is creating enough stillness to
Mm,
listen.
mm.
And that's the bit that a lot, and I'm, so guilty of it because, I've lived most of my life, shoulders up.
Yes, yeah.
I don't need any of this malarkey down here, just,
Yeah.
no thanks. So stillness,
Mm,
if we don't have the stillness, then we can't listen. And if we can't listen, then we're going to miss those real kind of vital signals. And that's what a beautiful detail. It's the warmth. What a beautiful. That's when it becomes so alive. You've listened.
mm,
You've listened. There's some genuine contact.
yeah,
Gestalt, but there's some contact for that little bit of wisdom to come whispering through.
yeah.
Oh, I like it when.
Mm, mm, yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think that's the second thing, as we've talked, I was thinking about is how connected you are to below the neck, to your body, and also how you notice, and this is, this is a skill, right, to notice the body of others as well. Like earlier on, when I was all tense and my shoulders had come up, and being able to pick up on those signs in ourselves and also in others is a critical part of coaching for me. And I'm not sure, again, I think through the courage work, because we talk a lot about embodiment and connection to self when we do the courage building work, but embodiment was a whole other discovery for me.
Mm.
I was like, oh, okay. Because I literally, as you said, I spend all of my time in my head, and still I have a somatic supervisor for this reason, because when I started I was so desperate to connect with my body. I was like,
Mm.
I'm so disconnected. And as I've become more connected, even now, I still do the right. Well, I'm connected. How can I logically now explain what's happening in my body? How can I give it words and logic and cognitive thinking? Right. So there's even that. I love, and this stillness thing, this ability to just notice and
Mm.
be still is so important. And so I feel like that sense of what's happening in your body for you, and I'm wondering therefore if this is something, we can all kind of be aware of, is that kind of, I think earlier on when I grimace and you said, that grimace is sometimes, I wonder if it's part of the shadow. So again, tuning into your body, I'm guessing from your perspective, and I'd certainly agree with it, is again a really important part of starting to tap into that unconscious shadow work. Is that fair?
Yeah, yeah, and I think so. For me, as a kind of a head first
Yeah.
and second and third and fourth and
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
hello, um, having that bias. Um, so parts work has actually been a really useful kind of segue, if you like. I think going straight to somatic stuff would just be like would have been too bewildering for me. I just like, I do not speak that language. I'm never going to speak that language. Then that can feel shaming,
Mm,
because that's another thing I can't get right, and then we're off on that merry-go-round again of how rubbish we are and blah blah blah.
yeah.
So working with parts, so like almost like to tune into, so when it feels like this, I wonder what part is activated.
Mm,
Oh, and it feels really gross or really anxious, or if I feel quite sick, or if I feel quite empty, oh, I wonder what part has got activated, and I wonder what story then. And then I've got something. So head's got something to make meaning around, but it's making meaning around the signals in the body. And we know how to be in relationship, right? So then we be in relationship with parts. So then I can start to disidentify and put them out there. And then that leaves a little more space. And then over time, it means that there's more space more of the time. And that sense of baseline shifts.
Right.
Because most of the time, everything I felt, critic would just find a way to come in and tell me that it was my fault. There was no space, there was no room. So yeah, parts for me has just been really helpful in bit by bit by bit. She said that lovely kind of full chest thing.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I can. So then when it comes to the shadow work, absolutely that attunement, then you need space to resonate so that you can then kind of a wince, a cringe, a turning away from, a contraction. That then just becomes data, helpful data that we can get curious about.
Yeah. And we're back to curiosity, right? Gosh, it's just so, I mean, I love curiosity, but I also know, I mean, I love it. I'm a very curious person, but not about everything. I'm not, there are certain things I'm very curious about and other things that I'm not the slightest bit curious about, right? But I love curiosity. It's such a, for me, it has such a childlike quality to it, which I enjoy. But I think that there's something about curiosity. It comes up in so much because I know it's a very vulnerable choice. Choosing to be curious is a very vulnerable choice because we have to admit to not knowing, essentially. And it's a big part of courage work for sure. But I think it's more than that, because curiosity is, for me, what creates the space. Can I be curious enough about this thing to just create some space around it? Almost like so I can put it out in front of me and look at it, and might walk around it and have a little look at it from the other side. And can I hold it out in front of myself, almost create that space, and be curious about it. And that's even harder when the thing that you're holding is like a hot potato, because I don't really like it, or it feels shaming, as you say, right? So it's like a hot potato. I'm like, not only is it burning my hands, you now want me to look at it and walk around it, and when actually what I want to do is just drop it. So there's such courage in doing that, and that brings us right back to the self-compassion, because in those moments, I'll keep using the hot potato metaphor, I don't know where it came from, but anyway, as I'm holding that hot potato and I'm thinking, I just want to drop this and not look at it, thank you, because it's hurting my hands and it's not very nice. I don't really like potatoes anyway. I'm also able to look at it and be able to say to myself, this is really hard. This is really hard to look at this and to be curious about it. This is hard, and that's okay. And that is self-compassionate, because I think quite often we think about self-compassion is, well, drop the potato. That's the self-compassionate thing to do. It's like, no, self-compassion is about saying, yeah, this is tough, and it's okay. It's okay to struggle. What do you need right now? So I'd like someone to come along with I'm going to really run with the metaphor. I need someone to come along with a basin full of cold water and tip it over the hot potato, please. Great. Okay. So who's that person then? Right. So it's accepting that this is hard and this is a struggle, and that's okay. This is not about fixing.
It's lovely, isn't it? Like that calling another additional resource. It's almost like that supports us to be in relationship with ourselves in a more than way, so that you can, stay for longer. There's all that resource that comes through compassion, so that it isn't, reactive or rigid or tossed. So much of our life, it's toss it, don't like it, toss it, pretend it's not there.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But
Chuck
we
it
have to
away.
get that capacity from somewhere, and self-compassion is that capacity builder, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. So I'm keeping an eye on time because, I said to Teresa when we started this session, I'm going to keep an eye on time as I always do. But I know I could talk to Teresa for hours on end. It's such a privilege this is complete self-indulgence because it's a complete privilege just to be able to hold you for all of this time and to talk to you about this. But I'm wondering now about this kind of bringing this kind of the work that you do, the shadow work, the self-compassion work, this part stuff, all those things you've talked about, and kind of bringing that to courageous coaching. What does courageous coaching look like for you, I guess, based on all of that stuff that you have and that you hold that's beautiful?
I think it's pulling on one of the threads that's been with us throughout this conversation, really, and it is that, having the courage to be, and knowing that that is no small thing. Because inevitably then that will mean, we have to give up on our experts, we have to give up on our getting it right, strokes, feeling good. We have to give up on all of that to sit in that humility of, I don't know how this is going to go. I don't know if I will serve. I don't know if I'm the right fit. I don't, and I've no idea where this word has come from, and it's not the right word, but I'm going to speak it anyway because it's sort of just dropped into my mind. There's a luminosity that is the it's almost like the payback. I don't think we can have the intent. It's one of those, isn't it? If we have the intention of wanting it to be, then we lose all of the magic. But there is a beautiful magic in that real humility and grace, and of saying, well, here I am.
Yeah.
With my intention of showing up human to human. No shields, no protections, all my limits. But then there's often, that's what I found, like there's such a beauty to, my work continues to change. I sometimes wonder, eventually I think will I stop calling myself a coach? Because tonally there's, when you are just sitting human to human.
Yeah.
And I know there's lots of other coaches sitting with that curiosity at the moment. There's something in the field that's really exciting, two souls sitting, wondering what it is to be a human.
Yeah.
It's
100%. And I think that for me, it's why I love coaching and why I guess coaching has become my thing. I am a coach. It's not something I do. And I say that because ultimately for me, coaching is about two human beings in connection with each other. And that in itself, yes, there are lots of situations where we're two human beings in connection with each other, but if you can bring humanity and skill and curiosity and compassion, all those things we've talked about, if you can bring all of those things into that human to human connection, that's mind-blowing, right? That's mind-blowing where that could go, what that could be. And so for me, it's always the potential in the coaching relationship that I find exhilarating and exciting. And maybe that's where the magic is, right? For sure. 100%. And I think there's something else, because you're right, this idea of, who am I? Who do I want to be? Who am I becoming as a coach is a question that I ask often in supervision and other contexts, right? Who are you becoming? Not which tool are you going to add or, which book are you going to read next, but who are you becoming as a coach? Because I want to kind of close by our conversation by saying, but this is really hard work, and it's not that the work on ourselves It's really hard work, and it isn't a 5-minute fix.
No.
This is a for me, it's certainly a lifelong process of discovery and development, that becoming. It isn't, well, I wasn't yesterday and today I am, right? It's that really long process. And I think that as coaches, when I meet people for the first time who are wanting to become coaches, they're not there yet. I always feel that I want to share that. I want to say, this is not just about, grow and questions and listening. Yes, you need all of that. But I need you also to realize that this is going to be a lifelong journey of development for you. And you don't have to be ready right now, but you just need to know that that's what's coming, right? Because it isn't just a course and then you're done.
I had a therapist for many years, and one of his many catchphrases was, check your willingness, Teresa. Check your willingness. And I think it's that, am I willing? Am I willing?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that makes me think of, ready, willing, and able. I don't know where but that phrase, ready, willing, and able. And I'm thinking, actually, in this context, it's not about being ready. It's not about being able, but the willingness is, the willingness to do the work.
Yeah.
Well, Teresa, it has been an absolute pleasure, privilege to spend some time with you talking about this. As I say, I feel very, very indulgent because I've just, had 55 minutes, an hour of your time, just you and I having a lovely conversation. And I find the work that you do fascinating, but also so interconnected with this idea of courage. And you've played a huge part in my journey of becoming. So I'm very grateful for that, and I appreciate you coming along today.
Oh, thank you. It's just been a blast to hang out with you. I could obviously talk about this for hours too. And I just, I really appreciate your generosity in all that you've shared to kind of, help fuel our conversation along. It's a real gift. So thank you for that too.
Lovely. Thank you, Teresa. Take care. Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of the Courageous Coach podcast. I hope it gave you something to reflect on, something to feel, and maybe even something to act on. If you've been nodding along or feeling that tug of recognition, you're not alone. These conversations are here to remind us that courage isn't about having it all figured out. It's about showing up, doing the inner work, and being willing to be seen, even when it feels uncomfortable. If that sounds like the kind of coaching journey you want to go deeper into, I'd love to invite you to check out the Courageous Coach program. It's designed especially for qualified coaches in the early years of building their independent practice. Those who want to coach with more courage, clarity, and humanity, and grow a business that truly reflects who they are. You'll find all the details over on my website, and I've popped the link in the show notes to make it easy for you. And if we're not already connected, come and find me on LinkedIn. Whether you've got questions about the program, want to share what's resonated for you in this episode, or you just fancy a chat. If you've enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow or subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss what's coming next. And if you know another coach who might need a little courage boost, pass it on. Courage is contagious, after all. Thanks again for listening. Until next time, stay curious, stay human, and keep choosing courage.